Today's video is all about buying a used vehicle and 5 things you need to do before buying a used car. Today we're going to be looking at a 2000 Toyota 4Runner that I was considering buying, and I'll let you know at the end of this video if I'm going to buy it or not. I bought many used vehicles throughout my life, and there are a lot of things that you forget about when your emotion is attached. You found a vehicle online, you go look at it, and you're like, this is awesome, this is what I thought it was going to be. The price seems good, you know what, I want to take it. I'm just going to start it up and make sure it sounds good, and then I'm going to see if I can maybe get him to come down a little bit and then take this thing home. Wrong. You need to have a checklist and go down the list, you know, because you don't want to find out later on, especially if it's a used car dealership that does not offer any kind of return or warranty. Used cars are as is. So let's get started. Number one is doing proper research before you even get there. So do a quick Google search, find out the forums that people are in and common problems. My favorite place to go is carcomplaints.com. It is not a forum, it is just where people report issues that they've had with a vehicle. And the example I like to use right now is, it's not even for really a used car, it's for a new Honda CR-V that the engine is allowing fuel to get into the oil and it's diluting it. And it is all over Car Complaints. So if you buy one of those and it's a surprise to you, you didn't do enough research. And it's also good to just type in the car into Kelley Blue Book to find out what the value of it is and if you have some negotiating room. And Car Gurus will tell you if it's a good deal, a fair deal, bad deal. Number two is giving the whole car just a once over. Walk around it, pop the hood, look underneath to see if there's any fluids that have dripped, see if there's anything up under the car that's currently dripping or shows that, you know, there's fluids leaking. And let's take a look under the hood. So it looks dirty, but it doesn't show any signs of fluids leaking or anything out of the ordinary. And a really good practice is to take the engine oil cap off and take a look underneath it. So if it looks perfectly clean, you know that they've prepared for your visit and they've cleaned things up. So that could be a red flag there. And you know, some oil burnt on. Not necessarily a major issue. This vehicle has 180,000 miles. And you want to look at the oil on the dipstick. It's going to be hard to focus on that, but make sure it doesn't have any weird looks to it. If it's like real thick looking or milky, you know, you might have a problem. Looking at the coolant reservoir, so it looks like the coolant reservoir has absolutely nothing in it. And if you pop this cap off and look down in there, it's going to be very hard to see. But it should not be thick like that. It definitely looks like something is wrong here. Looking underneath the car, there are no visible leaks. Now that we're underneath the car, you can tell that this transmission pan has been dropped and replaced because the gasket looks fresh, which could be a good thing because they probably changed the filter. If you look, there's, you know, some fluid, and I actually wiped off a lot of fluid, but there was some fluid dripping here off the transmission, and it was down on this bar here. So this vehicle definitely had some fluids dripping off of it, and it was a little troubling. You can't be afraid to crawl all the way underneath the car. So I'm laying underneath the car and I'm noticing that these brake lines are completely rusted, and it looks like an outer layer has completely flaked off, and it's just, you know, a little bit more rust away from completely breaking through. So that's a little scary. Okay, now that we've done our research and we've checked out the fluids under the hood and briefly looked underneath the car, you know, we're going to want to start it up and take it for a test drive. Because in reality, used car dealerships, you know, they might top off all the fluids, they might fill the coolant reservoir, clean that up just to make it look like it's running good. So you want to be careful of that as well. So this one, on this example, it just happened to be low and I caught that, but it might not always be the case. So you want to take it on a lengthy test drive. One thing I'm always for sure to have with me is one of these OBD2 readers. Connects to your Bluetooth and you pop it into any vehicle that's 1996 or newer. And there's an app that you can download. It's called Torque Lite, and it's free, and it can give you coolant temperatures and, you know, various other things that you want to look at and see if it's running hot. And it could be a good indicator, and if a check engine light comes on, you'll know exactly what the code is. So be prepared with one of these. So now we're going to start up the vehicle and listen to the engine and how it sounds at startup. Sounds pretty good to me. You want to check and see how the transmission feels when you shift into a gear. If it ever bangs into a gear, you know that something is worn out. So I have my Torque Lite app set up here so I can check it while I'm driving. Okay, so main things you want to look for while driving is you want to feel for how the transmission shifts. And my first to second gear shift feels fine, but right after it engages, I feel like a thud. It's coming from the back, and this is a rear-wheel drive vehicle, so I'm not sure what that is exactly, but it's a little concerning. You want to check to see that the car, you know, steers straight. It doesn't pull drastically to one side. Like I said, checking the operating temperature, making sure the gauges all look good and there's no overheating issues, and just how it drives overall. Making sure that acceleration is there. If a car feels severely underpowered, you could have, you know, some issues with compression. So right now I've been driving for about 10 minutes and the coolant is not at any temperature that is concerning, but the car seems to drive fairly well other than the transmission. Okay, once we conclude our test drive, I'm going to leave the vehicle running with my gauge reading, because even when idling, you want to make sure it doesn't overheat when idling. Cars are less likely to overheat when moving because there's a lot of air moving through. Number 4, the fourth thing to check is rust. So not only on the exterior of the vehicle that's visible, but you want to look underneath and see what kind of, you know, frame rust it has. Just rust throughout the whole vehicle. So now we're looking for rust. Anything that looks like pilfering rust and not just surface rust. Really, it does not look too bad under here for a nearly 20-year-old vehicle. This is pretty common. Let's take a look in the back. So we have some slight pilfering rust here. And on the transfer case, there's quite a bit of rust. And when checking the exterior, a lot of times these quarter panels are where you end up with rust because a lot of water gets kicked up and trapped. But on this car, I don't see really any exterior rust. Okay, so the car's been sitting for about 5 minutes while I checked out the rust, and temperatures are still within range. And number 5, the final thing you want to check out are wearable items. You want to know what you're going to have to replace down the road. So you want to look at the tires, you want to look at the serpentine belts under the hood, see if there's cracks in them. Because tires, it's hard to find good tires for $400 or less. So that's a big investment depending on how much you're spending on this used car. You know, some people buy used cars for $1,000. If you're going to be spending half the price of the whole car on a new set of tires. Another big one is brakes, brake pads, normal wear item. You got to try to look in there and see what kind of condition they're in. And during the test drive, you want to hit the brakes hard and see if you feel any shaking of the wheel. That's a good sign that there's warped rotors and they're going to need to be replaced. So not only the brake pads, but the rotors. So looking at the belts, they don't look in too bad a shape. Very slight cracks in them. but no major cracks. It's hard to see down here, but that belt looks good as well. And looking at the coolant reservoir, there's actually some coolant in there now, so it expands when warm, so it's good to check that again after you've warmed it up. But it's still kind of in that middle between full and low range. Checking the oil again, it looks to be in better condition after driving. It definitely lightens up in color. Still nothing too troubling under the oil cap. No foaming looks to be going on in this engine. These tires will definitely need to be replaced because, as you notice, there are a lot of cracks in them. So I wasn't able to find the manufacturer date on these specific tires, but that's a good thing to look at. If they're more than 5 years old, rubber degrades on its own, and you'll probably need to replace them. So I am just a short trip away from a flat tire with these. And if it's high on your priority list, make sure to check that all of the buttons work, especially air conditioning and heat. If the heater doesn't work, there could be a heater core issue, which is a very expensive fix. And air conditioning, which on this car, the button is broken, so you have to press it with your key in order to engage it. That would become annoying. The sunroof, I've realized, doesn't work. It's stuck shut. And on a rainy day, it leaked. That's hard to check because you would have to bring a bottle of water with you and kind of pour it on here, which, you know, if you want to find that out, you got to check it, and it could become a major problem. So after fully evaluating this vehicle with all 5 of those steps, I decided not to get that vehicle. Mainly because the coolant reservoir, you don't want to mess with coolant. It could be getting in the oil. It could be just burning, and that's not an easy fix. And the other thing is the rusted brake lines. That did not seem very safe. Brake lines going out while you're driving can be very dangerous. So in the end, I did not buy it. Thank you guys for watching this video. I really hope it helped when buying a used car, because it is a big financial purchase. And if you make a mistake and there's no return policy or warranty that comes with it, you are stuck with a whole lot of issues when you thought you were getting a good deal. Most used cars do not come with any kind of warranty. So be careful, check all this stuff out beforehand, and good luck buying your next used car. See you next time.